Right, good evening, everyone. I've called what I'm going to call tonight, if that made sense, Must I? Question mark. And I want to sort of pose some questions that we sometimes ask ourselves and then consider how we might answer them. Now, I feel a little bit like I'm cheating tonight because really I'm going to steal things that have already been said and put them together in a different order. So I feel a little bit like I'm doing a revision session. But actually, when I was thinking about what I want to say, these are the things that have stuck with me, and I wanted very much to echo them back in case you've either not heard it or missed it, and just to move us on perhaps just a little bit more in pulling these things together. At the end of October, one Wednesday night, Anth talked about Calab and Joshua. Some of you will remember. These guys were part of a nation whom God rescued out of a really terrible situation in Egypt where they were under slavery, being oppressed, being treated really badly. And God rescued them on the promise of this new land that they were going to go into and have as their very own. They weren't going to be slaves anymore. They were going to be free men. And they just had to make this journey with God, and it was going to all be theirs. Now, of course, they're like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. They trusted God. They got out really miraculously. The way they got out, it was quite spectacular. You'll have heard of the Red Sea parting. It's not often you see like a whole ocean just make a path through the middle of it. So it was quite spectacular the way they got out. But of course, not long into their process, they end up in the desert, and they end up going round and round and round in circles because actually they didn't get there as fast as they wanted to go, and it didn't quite work out according to plan. And so they got a bit disheartened. And you could think, well, that's not very good. But then I think we've all been there, haven't we? Think God can rescue us and think, right, come on then, next thing. It's not happening. All of a sudden we're discouraged. And eventually God had to make a decision about this group of people. And God had to decide basically that it just wasn't going to happen with this group of people. He wasn't going to be able to take them in. And that's I hope God never sort of looks at us and thinks, I can't get those people to where I've promised them, or looks at my life. I hope we're always willing to make the journey. And there were these two guys called Joshua. I keep wanting to say Joseph and Caleb, but I think that's because they're your children. Joshua and Caleb, who, in spite of this, they were still up for it. But because of what everybody else chose, they had to basically stay in a process for 38 years. I shall say that again. 38 years. If we have to wait a week for something, we're like, hurry up, God, get on with it. 38 years. Now, I'm 36, so that's 2 years. Thanks, Jen. 2 years. New best friend. 2 years away from 38. I mean, it's like the whole of my life, they were waiting just to be able to get the thing that they thought they were going to get fairly immediately. Now, what's incredible about these two guys, which we heard, was that they kept a right spirit about them, such that when the time came, 38 years later, when you get that point, they were still up for it and ready to go in. They hadn't become sort of jaded or too cynical or too like, oh, well, now you turn up and sort it out. Where have you been for 38 years? They're there, they're ready, and in they go. Now, I thought that was amazing and very, very impressive to have that kind of character that we should all aspire to. But there are 3 essential questions that it made me think about this story that I think we all ask at various points in our life. And these are the 3 questions. Must I keep doing this? Must I do this again? And must I let this go? Now, some of you might direct those questions at God himself. I mean, like, come on, God, what's going on? Some of us might direct it at life, the universe, anyone or anything that will listen, and they're normally accompanied by a sigh of some intensity or volume, depending on how you express yourself. So it's the kind of thing like, do I have to keep having this conversation? Who said that? Do I have to keep having this conversation? Do I have to keep performing this task at work? Do I have to stay in this place? Do I have to do this again? Do I have to tell you again? Is it really necessary that I let this go? Can't I just hold on to it for a little bit longer? Or maybe just a little bit of it? Am I always going to feel like this? Will things ever change? It's familiar, isn't it? We've all had some kind of expression of those questions in life. Some of you, I know, will be there now. It's our circle. It's our thing we're going round and round and round in and not feeling like we're getting anywhere. And it's where we're actually even tempted to the point where we tell ourselves we were better off in Egypt because whatever we've been rescued into isn't actually any better than what we had before, and actually it's worse because we're feeling it right now, because we've forgotten actually how we felt then, because that's all become murky, and right now is how I feel, right now is the worst thing I've ever been in, because it is now, and I am feeling it now. Now, I found myself asking these questions at times, and I've been thinking about things that are possible answers to them. And again, I'm just reflecting back some things that have been said. And the 7 things, I got to 6, but the holy bit of me kicked in. I thought, I can't have 6. There's something unholy about 6. So there's 7. I have to break that religious spirit, don't I? One week I'll do 6, just to break it in me. Right, number 1. Okay, first point. And I'm hoping that these will help you. If you feel like you're asking those questions, that remembering all, some of these things will help you come to some kind of conclusion in your life. Number 1, remember that it is not better in Egypt. It is not better, and it was not better. If you're in a circle, don't look to go back to things you've already been rescued from through those rose-tinted glasses of hindsight. Don't kid yourself that, well, back then, it was fine back then. It was all fine back then. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Don't make sin your last free act. What have we learnt sin is? Remember, pioneers, settlers. Turning back is the thing that will be the problem. We've got to always keep moving forward. Always going to be, if you settle in, you're going to always settle in that form of slavery where you've got to keep all those rules in place. Don't turn back. Do not turn back. Whichever circle you are in, do not turn back. God didn't go to the trouble to save you, to then leave you hanging. Just be like, well, I'll rescue you from that, and then I'll just leave you hanging in the middle of nowhere. Now, it might feel like that, but actually, the thought I had was that the one who was left hanging was Christ. Christ hanging on the cross, which is our guarantee that you cannot be left hanging, because he was left hanging on your behalf. And I guarantee that in the middle of that circle, all of God's love, all of God's grace is being invested into you, because it's got to be, because he is it. He is it. And he is that I am, and that I am is in you. So whether it feels it or not feels it, he is not going to leave you hanging. He is not leaving you hanging, and you've just got to keep going forward and not turn back. The disciples, put all their hope and trust in this guy. They put all their eggs in that basket. Everything. They said, there's this guy, we're going to follow him. And do you know what they got? He died. I'm like, we're all in with you, Jesus. And then they watched Jesus die. Now, if you think about that and you think, what would you have done? If everything you'd put your hope in suddenly died, you'd have thought, right, that didn't work out then, so let's forget about it. But do you know what? They didn't do that. Something in them said, this thing can't be over. It can't be over. And we're hanging on by a thread, but this thing can't be over. And do you know what did they get when they stuck with it? They actually saw this thing. They saw him come back to life. They got a resurrection. And not only that, but a few weeks later, they got to see him go up into heaven. I mean, just imagine seeing Jesus going up into heaven, that ascension. That would have looked fairly incredible. And all of a sudden, they saw the whole of God's glory on display. And then they saw the Holy Spirit come down. And it looked over and it looked dead, but actually they hung in there. Number 2. Can't spend that long on each point or I'll run over, but it's all right. Number 2. Being broken ain't so bad. I typed this today when I was typing it up there. Do you like my little background? Thought it was quite good. I typed this today and I thought I can't type it, because to put up there being broken ain't so bad. I know what being broken is, and I know some of you are feeling broken, and to put it up there, just feels like that sounds so glib and so awful. But do you remember when we heard about feeling good, about feeling bad? And the bottom line is, some of us have these containers that we're holding ourselves in life. And unless that thing gets smashed, we are going to be in such trouble. And the things that break us are normally the things that have to be broken, because then you get something new. You get a new container to put your life in, one that's going to hold you together, a much better. You'll remember years ago, Chris talked about the cup. Better the cup be better to be broken and clean rather than dirty and intact. And we can tell ourselves, do you know what? I've got my life all nicely in order. Thank you very much. It might not be perfect, but it's in order. Can't mess with that. But actually, sometimes we've got to be like, yeah, let's mess with it. Let's mess with it. Get it broken, because your life's not supposed to be in order. Your life's supposed to be free, and your life's supposed to be full. Now, it sounds a little bit glib, and it's not at all. And any of you tonight who are in that place where you are feeling completely broken, it is very difficult. And, you know, some of us in here, we've got our limps from where we got broken and had to wrestle some stuff through. But you will get a new container, and you will learn how to handle it. And, you know, I've been in a place where I've been so afraid to get broken again that I've been holding on too tightly. And actually, we've got to be willing to say, do you know what? I'd rather risk being broken if I'm just building another container that isn't going to sustain me than be so afraid to actually move my life forward. Number 3, drink from the source that gushes, not drains. Who says, oh, it's draining me? I hear it all the time at work. Who says in here? It's all right. Have you heard young people say, it's all right, drainer? Oh, you're draining me. Have you heard that? They say it all the time, oh, it's draining me, this. Things in life, when they say, oh, it's draining me, it means it absolutely feels like it's sucking the life out of them. It's normally when they're bored. Obviously, they're never bored in my lessons. They're so stimulating and wonderful. This is what Jesus said in the message, John 4. Everyone who drinks this water will get thirsty again and again. He's talking to the woman at the well. Anyone who drinks the water I give will never thirst, not ever. The water I give will be an artesian spring within, gushing fountains of endless life. Notice those words again and again. There's some stuff that we try to drink of in life. It's that more thing, isn't it? Well, need more of it, need more of it, need more of it. And the more you get, the more you want. And the more you get, the more you need. And you have to keep going back again and again and again for your fix. But actually, there's a different sort of experience you can have, because that's always going to drain you. You're going to take it and then it's going to drain you. You're going to need to go back for more and more. The actual experience we're after is that enough experience, that sense that you can drink from something that will be a source in you that is enough, that somehow satisfies you. And if you're in an experience in the minute where you're feeling constantly more, you're probably finding you're probably drinking from the wrong source in your life. That's why you're striving after this more. Isaiah 40 says this. I loved this. Why would you ever complain, O Jacob? Put your name in there, okay? Why would you ever complain, or whine, saying, God has lost track of me. He doesn't care what happens to me. Don't you know anything? Haven't you been listening? God doesn't come and go. God lasts. I love that. God lasts. He's creator of all you can see or imagine. He doesn't get tired out, doesn't pause to catch his breath, and he knows everything inside and out. He energizes those who get tired. We all get tired. Gives fresh strength to dropouts, for even young people tire and drop out. Young folk in their prime stumble and fall, but those who wait upon God get fresh strength. They spread their wings and soar like eagles. They run and don't get tired. They walk and don't lag behind. And that lovely idea of God lasting in you like an everlasting battery. You know what are those batteries that go on and on forever? That there's something within you. The kingdom is within you. Eternity is inside of you. And that is going to last within you and empower you as your source for everything you need to get you through. Number 4, asking for a way out is not always the best response when there's a bigger picture. Someone said to Jesus, there was a guy born blind. And someone said, who sinned, Jesus, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Whose fault was it, Jesus? Why is he like he is? And Jesus basically said, look, that's not the question. Basically, this happened to show God's glory. We've heard that glory is God's weight and significance. And in John 12, Jesus said this. I love that this is Jesus because it shows he's in it too. Right now I'm storm-tossed, which is such a weird expression. Right now he's basically feeling he's in the middle of a storm. What am I going to say? So Jesus is saying to himself, what am I going to say? Father, get me out of this. Who's ever said, get me out of this? Father, get me out of this. No. This is why I came in the first place. I'll say, Father, put your glory on display. A voice came out of the sky, I have glorified it, and I'll glorify it again. What I thought was incredible is he didn't ask for a way out. He wanted a way out. He didn't ask for a way out, but he asked for God's kingdom to come out. Remember, that's within us. And you might be in a situation, and your prayer might be, God, get me out of this. God, get me out of this. And you're wondering, why isn't God listening? Why isn't God getting me out of it? The best prayer might not be, God, get me out of this. The best prayer will be, Father, put your glory on display in this. Because then his weight and his significance that's lasting in you is going to be in it. So if you're constantly saying, Father, get me out of this, I challenge you to say, Father, put your glory on display. Pray that for a week. And this time next week, you'll be drinking from a source that gushes, not drains. Number 5, remember his how long. John Band a few weeks ago talked about us knowing the extent of the love of God for us and how important that was. And it was funny because while I was thinking about this, there's times in the Bible that God sort of says through the prophets, how long am I going to have to put up in this? So I did a bit of a search for how long in the Bible. And what I found was this. So let me read it to you. And I'm kind of messing with it a bit, but I'm allowed. So look at this, right? Ephesians 3. I pray that out of his glorious riches, he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp, here's where I've cheated, look, how wide and long, can you see how long, cheated, and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. We're constantly saying to God, how long am I going to have to do it? That's why we ask the must I keep doing this question, because we're like, oh, who's ever had a kid in the car going, are we nearly there yet? Are we nearly there yet? Only when you're round the first bend, are we nearly there yet? Who's discovered, and I'm sorry that if you are older and you didn't get to experience this, because it has a revolution. Who has a DVD player for their child to go in the car? Do you know what? The DVD player makes the world of difference to a long journey, because what happens is they get in the car, you plug them in with a film that they like, you get to drive, listen to your own music. They just watch their film. They don't ask you, are we nearly there yet? Why don't they ask you, are we nearly there yet? Because they're not in their heads, in that car. In their heads, they're in the land of Lord of the Rings or Horrid Henry or wherever they are, because actually their experience is no longer, I am sitting in this car and we are going on and on and on and on. They're in another world experiencing something different. And so the how long question, you can ask it one of two ways. Your how long question can be a time thing. How long am I going to be in it? Or you can actually move your how long to a different dimension. And instead of it being about how long am I in this, it's going to be how long is your love going to last for me in this? And it's going to be like, well, as long as it takes. And then all of a sudden, instead of you being in the circle, you're not in the circle because you're in another dimension, experiencing it from a different perspective, just like a kid with a DVD player in the car. They're absorbed in another story. And if you get involved in the story of God's love for you, that is lasting and coming out of you all the time, that story that you're absorbed in can supersede the circle that you may have no choice but to keep walking in. Because some circles, you've got to keep doing what you need to do, but that doesn't mean to say that you have to be completely defined by that circle, because you can be seeing it from another dimension. Number 6. Think about what you're writing into someone else's story. What you're having to do right now might be fixed. You might not be able to change it. Joshua and Caleb, is that right? I said Joseph and Caleb. Joshua and Caleb had to stay there for 38 years. They had to stay there, and they had to keep doing that. But actually, they kept that spirit about them. And we heard, didn't we, last week? Betty shared so beautifully a couple of weeks ago. It was so moving what she said. And, afterwards, Anth was talking about whatever you do for the least, you do for me. The very thing you're stuck in and that circle that you're walking in again and again and again, you might be Christ to someone else. In fact, I would say you are Christ to someone else. And we perhaps don't always think through that in that any given moment, you are the face of Christ to that person. In your circle, in their circle, in whatever you are having to do. And are you being Christ to that person? And sometimes you might think, why do I have to keep doing this? What's all this about? Because you're so busy thinking about what you're having to do that you're forgetting that you have an incredible opportunity to be Christ in that situation. And you know, I had a thought this week about footprints in the sand, and I was thinking about the desert and going around in the circle. Sometimes you're the footprints in the sand for someone else. Sometimes you're carrying them because that's what they need right there, and perhaps they're heavy, and perhaps it's hard work, but perhaps in that moment, you being that footprint in their sand is you partnering with Christ in their salvation. And I think that's quite humbling, and I think that's also quite empowering, because then you want God to be lasting in you, because you want to see that person get into everything that they're supposed to be. Number 7. Oh, I'm doing really well. It's only 10 to 8. Number 7. Remember that the width of a boat can make the whole world of difference. Do you remember when Jesus was, those of you that know the story, the guys have been out fishing all night and caught nothing. So you can imagine what mood they're in. They're a bit fed up. We're doing this all night. It's not like they're going out for their hobby. That's their livelihood. That's how they provide for themselves and their families, and they have caught nothing. Jesus rocks up and says, throw your net the other side of the boat. Now, your reaction, we all were like, yes, of course they did. It was Jesus. You would think, don't be so stupid. This side of the boat's here and we've caught nothing. That side of the boat's there. What difference is that going to possibly make? It's there. There's not going to be fish swimming that side and not that side. But they took him at his word. They threw the net out down on the other side of the boat. They trusted him. And actually, they ended up having so much they couldn't contain it. And there might be things that people are telling you to do from God, or God himself is telling you to do, that you're thinking, well, that's a stupid idea. It might look absolutely, totally fruitless to you. But if you are willing, by faith, to take that, move that width of a boat and make that adjustment, you can actually find that you will end up getting something that you've been searching for yourself and not been able to produce, just because you move that slight dimension. And some of you, I guess there's an encouragement and also a warning there, because some of you, to move the width of a boat in faith is going to bring you such incredible success. But some of you have moved the width of a boat the other way, and now you're wondering why your life isn't producing what your life was producing. And just that subtle shift, that width of the boat the other way, is what's causing the problem, which is when you're asked the question, must I do it again? Yeah, move back the other side of the boat where you were. Now, I'm going to bring it to a close, and we heard last week about the reluctant God of the Old Testament. And I thought about those questions, about God asking those questions. Must I keep being this God when all I wanted to do was father you? Have I got to keep doing it like this? Can I not do it the way I always wanted to do it? Have I got to keep giving you the harsh treatment when all I want to do is love you? Every time things kicked off with the various judges and kings and prophets and in the Old Testament, you know, you heard the voice of God come through. Oh, have I got to do this again? You know, have I got to just keep going over this again with you? And then I thought to myself, well, when did God have to ask the question, must I let this go? And I thought, when Jesus went to the cross, he had to let go of his life. He had to actually let go of everything he's experienced up to that point as a human. He had to lay it down. And he had to let that go. And that's quite a big deal. God had to be in this role that humanity had forced him to play. And he had to be in that role again and again and again. But then, God's width of a boat that he moved was Christ. So instead of having to be in Christ, we see him throw his net the other side of a boat, because instead of him having to be this God of ritual, he got to be Father. And actually, he's moved his width of a boat for us so that now he can father us. That all the anger that he had to have because he was a holy God, is now on Christ. And he, in his kindness and grace through the cross, can just father us and love us. And in light of that, when I was thinking what's the answer to those questions is, must I keep doing this again? Must I keep doing this? Must I do it again? Must I let this go? The one question that I thought God asks of us is, he says, will you? Not, yeah, you got to. Yeah, you got to keep doing that because I said so. But he just, sometimes I think he comes into our life and says, no, you don't have to, but will you? And some of you tonight, I know God's maybe saying to you, will you keep doing this? Yeah, I know you're tired, but will you drink of me? I know you don't want to do this again, but will you? Not because he's big, scary God who's saying, you have to do this or else, but actually because he comes into your heart and says, will you? Will you keep going, doing what you need to do in that situation? Will you do it again? That thing that you've put down, for all the reasons that you put it down, I need you to take it up again, and I need you to do it again. And that thing where you think, must I let this go? He says, will you? Will you let it go? Will you trust me with it? And I thought about Joseph and Caleb. Joseph. So sorry. Joseph and Caleb are going to have a different spirit. Do you know what? I will prophesy that over your boys. With whatever, I can believe that for your boys, that they'll have a different spirit about them for the rest of their life, however long it takes. Okay? Joshua and Caleb. I thought about what God might have said to them when at the start of this 38 years, or perhaps in year 7, or year 12, or year 17, or year 23, or year 30. And I thought this is the sort of stuff that God might say to them. Now, I've taken a bit of poetic license, but I still think it catches the spirit. Imagine God saying this to the boys, okay? I've tried, boys. I wish I could take you in now, but my hands are tied. Will you wait while I work this out another way? There's things I can't fully explain to you, but I know you trust me, and that means a lot to me. Will you keep being my expression? Will you stay with me, boys, because I'm still with you, and I will provide for you and bring you to your inheritance as soon as I can. Keep my spirit, boys. It's going to be tiring. You're going to want to give up at times. You might wonder what the point is, and it might seem like I've left or that I'm not saying much. You might even think you imagined it all and look back on Egypt like it wasn't so bad after all. Other people's choices might seem bigger than me, but wait on me. I'll keep making you strong. I'll be working beyond your line of sight more than you'll ever know. So, will you? Will some of you keep going? Will some of you do it again? And will some of you let it go? And we heard on Wednesday night, under the new covenant of freedom, you don't have to. But do you know what? We can say, I don't have to, so I will. And I know tonight that some of you need some strength to keep going. Some of you need to choose to let some things go. And some of you need to choose to do some things again that you have stopped doing. So if any of that applies to you, I want you to stand to your feet. We're going to pray. And as you stand, when you marry someone, when I married my lovely husband, you have to say, I will. You say, I will. And actually, that's quite a powerful thing. And in you standing tonight, what you're saying is, do you know what, God? I will. So if you want to respond to that, stand. We're going to pray. We're going to say, I will. And God's going to help us, isn't he? Okay? God, tonight, we know that you are interested in our lives and you know exactly where we are at. But we just stand tonight, God, and we say, I will. That those things in life that seem we don't want to keep going in, the things that we don't really want to do again, and the things that we don't really want to let go of, we look at you today and we don't see that we have to do those things because we know that you've made us free. But we look at you and we say, I will. I will be your expression. I will be your life. I will get all the strength I need from you and not try and do this by myself and handle this by myself. I will put my life in your hands and move whatever width of a boat I need to move such that I catch your heart and your love and such that together we can catch kingdom in whatever expression we are having and you've called us to have in life. So today, see a group of people stood like at a wedding saying to you, we will. We will, because we don't want you to look at us and see a group of people that you say, I just can't do it with this bunch of people. We want you to see a bunch of people that you can do it with and you can do whatever you need to do because we're surrendered to you. So thank you, God. See our hearts tonight, and we trust you to give us all the power to keep doing what we need to do and to be everything that you want us to be. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, tie my voice in a bow and call me Mildred. Yes, it's me, off the telly for the Rock Church. Breaking through stereotypical and faith perception boundaries and stigmas. Clearing the way for a 21st century spiritual experience. Communicating life. An ice-breaking event. Every Saturday night at 6:45. I dare you. Striving for effective communication. Non-conventional by design. An evangelical Christian organization. Come and get it.